Commander Alex Turner stared at the massive alien ship floating outside his viewport. The USS Horizon had been on a simple exploration mission when these strange visitors appeared. Their ship was beautiful, all smooth curves and glowing lights. But something about it felt wrong to Alex. It looked more like art than a warship. The aliens called themselves the Zephyrian Council. They had been waiting for humanity to reach this part of space, and they were not happy about it. High Arbitrator Vexhai stood before Alex on the main screen, his blue skin shimmering with anger. The alien was tall and thin, with large black eyes that seemed to judge everything they saw. "Your species is a disease," Vexhai said, his voice cold and sharp. "We have studied your history. War after war, violence beyond measure. You have never known true peace." Alex kept his face calm, but inside he was curious. These aliens acted like they had never seen conflict before. Their own records showed 3,000 years without a single war. That seemed impossible to him. Where he came from, someone was always fighting about something. "We have maintained perfect harmony across 12 star systems for 3 millennia, Vexhai continued. "Our worlds know only peace, prosperity, and order. Then we discover you humans, spreading like a plague through the galaxy with your weapons and your wars." The alien leader gestured to his advisors, who all nodded in agreement. They looked scared, Alex realized. These creatures were actually afraid of humanity. It was almost funny. The human race had barely figured out faster than light travel, and these advanced aliens were trembling at the thought of them. "You will surrender all military assets immediately," Vexhai demanded. "Your species will submit to pacification protocols. We will teach you the ways of peace, even if we must. Force it upon you." Alex had to bite his tongue to keep from laughing. Force peace on humanity? These aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. "I'll need to discuss this with my superiors," he said politely. "You have 30 of your days," Vexhai replied. "After that, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." The transmission ended, and Alex immediately opened a channel to Earth. Within hours, he was speaking directly to Admiral Kate Sullivan and President Dan Parker in the White House Situation Room. Both leaders listened to his report with expressions that shifted from concern to amusement. "Let me get this straight," Admiral Sullivan said, leaning back in her chair. "They haven't fought a war in 3,000 years, but they want a force. Used to be peaceful?" President Parker was already pulling up intelligence reports on the Zephyrian military. What he saw made him shake his head in disbelief. Their defense force is basically a parade unit. Look at these ship designs. They're built for show, not for fighting. The president's military advisor, General Pete Johnson, studied the alien. Fleet composition on his tablet. "Sir, their biggest ships are slower than our cargo vessels. Their weapons are designed for precision strikes against stationary targets. They've never had to deal with moving enemies." Admiral Sullivan pulled up tactical analyses from the Navy's best strategists. Commander Lisa Wong had already run simulations based on the alien ship scans. The results were almost embarrassing. For the aliens, "They fight like it's a dance," Wong had written in her report. "Perfect formations, predictable movements, no improvisation. They've turned warfare into an art form, but forgot it's supposed to be about winning." President Parker looked around the room at his advisors. Secretary of Defense Matt Collins was trying not to smile. CIA Director Sarah Thompson was shaking her head in amazement. These aliens had picked a fight with the one species in the galaxy that had never stopped perfecting the art of war. "What's our response?" asked the president. Admiral Sullivan stood up and walked to the large display showing the alien fleet positions. "We tell them thanks, but no thanks. Politely, of course." The official response took 3 days to craft. Diplomats worked carefully to make it sound respectful while still being a clear rejection. The message was delivered by Ambassador Tony Rodriguez, who had years of experience dealing with difficult negotiations. The United States of America and the United Nations appreciate the Zephyrian Council's concerns, Rodriguez said in the formal transmission. However, we must respectfully decline your generous offer of pacification. We believe our species can coexist peacefully without such measures. The alien response came within hours. Vex High appeared on screen again, but this time he looked shocked, rather than angry. "You refuse our mercy?" he asked, his voice rising in pitch. "Do you not understand what we offer? Peace, order, an end to your savage ways." Rodriguez maintained his diplomatic smile. "We understand perfectly. Our answer remains no." Back on Earth, the human military was already making preparations. Not because they were worried. The intelligence was clear that the aliens posed little real threat, but because this was going to be educational. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Zephyrian Council was going to learn what real warfare looked like. Admiral Sullivan called a meeting of the Joint Chiefs. "Gentlemen, ladies, we're about to give these aliens a history lesson they'll never forget." Colonel Jake Martinez, commander of Luna Defense, was already positioning his forces. If the aliens wanted to make a statement, they would probably target the moon first. It was tactically obvious, which meant these peacekeepers would definitely try it. President Parker ended the emergency session with a simple observation. "They've had 3,000 years of peace. We've had 3,000 years of practice. Let's see which one serves better in a fight." The countdown had begun, and humanity was ready to teach the galaxy why peace was something you had to be strong enough to defend. Captain Ryan Brooks watched the alien fleet approach through the telescopes at Luna Station. Even from a distance, the Zephyrian ships were impressive to look at. They moved in perfect geometric patterns, like a synchronized swimming team in space. Each vessel gleamed with polished metal and pulsing lights that created beautiful displays across their hulls. "They're pretty," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, standing beside him at the observation deck. "Too pretty," Ryan nodded. In his 20 years of military service, he had learned that things built for war look different from things built for show. These alien ships looked like they belonged in a museum, not a battlefield. Their formations were perfect textbook examples, the kind of thing taught in military academies as examples of classical tactics. High Commander Zalteth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Harmony, feeling proud of the magnificent sight before him. 1,200 ships moved as one, their formations creating intricate patterns that had been perfected over centuries of peaceful ceremonies. Never before had the Zephyrian Defense Force assembled such a grand armada. "Magnificent," whispered his tactical advisor, Commander Yelinara. "The humans will surely surrender when they witness our overwhelming display of superiority." Zaltith agreed completely. How could these primitive warmongers possibly stand against such organized perfection? The human ships they had observed were crude and ugly, built for function rather than beauty. Clearly, these creatures had no appreciation for the art of warfare. Back on Luna, Colonel Jake Martinez was preparing his defenses with a grin on his face. The alien fleet was approaching exactly as predicted, in those same pretty formations, broadcasting their intentions on every frequency they could find. "Attention, primitive inhabitants of the Sol system," came the alien broadcast. "We are the Grand Armada of the Zephyrian Council. We come to demonstrate our overwhelming superiority and to demand your immediate surrender." The message was being transmitted across every human communication network. On Earth, people were gathering around screens to watch the approaching fleet. News anchors were calling it the greatest show in human history. "This is Linda Wong reporting live from Earth News Network," announced one reporter. "The alien invasion fleet is now entering the outer system, and we're getting our first close-up." Views of these remarkable ships. Commander Lisa Wong was stationed at the main lunar defense platform, watching the aliens approach with professional interest. She had been chosen to provide commentary for the military networks, and she was treating it like a sports broadcast. "What we're seeing here is a classic ceremonial approach," she explained to her audience. "Notice how they maintain perfect spacing and geometric formations. It's beautiful to watch, but completely impractical for actual combat." The alien ships continued their slow, methodical advance toward the moon. They were taking their time, clearly wanting to give humanity every opportunity to witness their magnificence and surrender appropriately. On the Eternal Harmony, High Commander Zaltith was confused by the human response. Instead of panic or desperate attempts at negotiation, the humans seemed to be treating this as entertainment. Their communication networks were full of commentary and analysis, as if this were some kind of sporting event. "Perhaps they do not understand the gravity of their situation," suggested Commander Yelinara. "Shall we demonstrate our weapons?" Zaltith considered this. The plan was to conquer the human moon first, making a clear statement of Zephyrian superiority. Once the humans saw their satellite captured, surely they would realize the futility of resistance. "Begin the final approach," he ordered. "Target their defensive installations, but be careful not to damage the moon's surface unnecessarily. We want to preserve it as a symbol of our victory." The Grand Armada shifted into attack formation, which looked remarkably similar to their approach formation, just with different spacing. The ships moved with practiced precision, each one knowing exactly where it belonged in the grand design. Lieutenant Ben Clark was piloting one of the human fighter squadrons stationed near Luna. He watched the alien approach with growing amazement. "Captain Foster, are you seeing this? They're flying like they're in a parade." Captain Amy Foster, leading the squadron, was equally baffled by the alien tactics. "Stay alert, people. Just because they look harmless doesn't mean they are." But the more they observed, the more obvious it became that these aliens had no idea how to fight a real battle. Their ships moved in predictable patterns, maintaining formations that prioritized appearance over tactical advantage. They were broadcasting their intentions and even their target priorities on open channels. On Earth, military analysts were having a field day. General Pete Johnson was explaining to reporters why the alien approach was strategically flawed. "They're maintaining formation integrity over tactical flexibility," he said. "In a real fight, you want to be unpredictable. These ships are moving like they're following a choreographed dance routine." President Dan Parker was watching from the Oval Office with his senior staff. The situation was almost surreal, an alien invasion that looked more like a space ballet than a military operation. "They really haven't fought a war in 3,000 years, have they?" he asked Admiral Sullivan. "No, sir, they haven't," she replied, "and it shows." The alien fleet reached the outer lunar perimeter and began broadcasting their final demands. High Commander Zaltith appeared on all human screens, standing proudly on his bridge with his perfect uniform and ceremonial weapons. "Humans of the Sol System," he announced, "you now witness the power of the Zephyrian Council. Your moon will be conquered within the hour. Surrender now, and your pacification will be swift and painless." The response came from Colonel Jake Martinez at Luna Defense. His voice was calm and almost friendly as he replied to the alien ultimatum. "This is Luna Defense Control to approaching alien fleet. You are entering restricted military space. You have 30 seconds to change course and withdraw, or we will open fire. Have a nice day." On the Eternal Harmony, the bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. Change course? Withdraw? Did these primitives not understand what they were facing? High Commander Zaltith felt insulted by the casual tone of the human response. There was no fear, no respect for Zephyrian superiority. These creatures needed to be taught a lesson about the consequences of defying a superior civilization. All ships, prepare for demonstration bombardment, he ordered. Show them the futility of resistance. The Grand Armada began powering up their weapons, elegant energy projectors designed for precise surgical strikes. They had been built for police actions against unruly traders, not for fighting an actual military force. Colonel Martinez watched his countdown timer reach 0. Around Luna, human defensive systems came online. Railguns that could punch holes through asteroids, plasma torpedoes designed to take out heavily armored targets, and kinetic kill vehicles that moved faster than most alien sensors could track. Time's up, Martinez announced cheerfully. Luna defense, weapons free. Let's give our guests a proper welcome. The real war was about to begin, and the Zephyrian Council was completely unprepared for what humanity considered a fair fight. The Battle of Luna lasted 14 minutes and 37 seconds. It would be remembered as the shortest war in galactic history, and the most educational. High Commander Zalteth watched in horror from his bridge as the first human weapon struck his formation. The railgun slug punched through the ceremonial shields of the vessel Peaceful Dawn like they were made of paper. The beautiful ship, which had never been designed to withstand actual combat damage, broke apart in a shower of sparks and debris. Impossible, whispered Commander Yelinara, staring at her tactical display. Their primitive kinetic weapons should not be able to penetrate our defensive fields. But the human weapons kept firing, and more Zephyrian ships were dying. The aliens had prepared for energy-based combat, a civilized way of fighting that allowed for precise surgical strikes. They had not prepared for humans who threw chunks of metal at incredible speeds, or for plasma torpedoes that burned through hull plating like acid through cloth. Lieutenant Ben Clark rolled his fighter into an attack run on a group of alien ships. They were still maintaining their perfect formation, making them easy targets. "This is almost too easy," he reported to Captain Amy Foster. "They're not even trying to evade." Captain Foster was leading her own squadron against the alien flanks. The enemy ships were beautiful, with smooth curves and graceful lines, but they flew like cargo haulers. Stay sharp, people. Easy targets can still be dangerous. But as the battle continued, it became clear that dangerous was not the right word for the Zephyrian fleet. Confused, terrified, and completely outmatched would be more accurate. On the Eternal Harmony, Zaltith was receiving damage reports that made no sense to him. His ships were equipped with the finest defensive systems in Zephyrian space, energy fields that could deflect any civilized weapon. But these humans were not fighting in a civilized manner. "They are using solid projectiles," reported his weapons. "Officer Kekstar, physical matter accelerated to extreme velocities. Our shields are not designed for such crude methods." The human kinetic kill vehicles were especially terrifying. These small, fast-moving objects struck with the force of small asteroids, punching holes completely through alien ships. The Zephyrian vessels, built for beauty and ceremony, had no armor thick enough to stop them. Commander Lisa Wong was providing live commentary from Luna Defense, treating the battle like a sporting event for her human audience. "The alien ships are maintaining formation even under fire. This suggests they have never faced an opponent that shoots back." She was right. The Zephyrian Defense Force had been trained for 3,000 years to conduct peaceful operations, patrols, ceremonies, and the occasional arrest of smugglers who surrendered immediately. They had never learned how to fight an enemy that wanted to kill them. Colonel Jake Martinez was coordinating the lunar defenses with the calm efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. Battery 7, target the command ship. Battery 3, take out their communications array. Let's wrap this up before lunch. The human weapons were not just more powerful than the aliens expected, they were used in ways that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Instead of targeting specific systems for surgical strikes, the humans aimed to destroy entire ships. Instead of maintaining orderly formations, human fighters twisted and rolled through space in patterns that made Zephyrian targeting computers confused. Lieutenant Kevin Turner was piloting one of the newest human fighters, testing its combat systems against live targets for the first time. At 18, he was the youngest pilot in the squadron, but he had been training for this his entire life. Target acquired, he reported, locking onto an alien destroyer. Fox 3. His missile streaked across space, its guidance system designed to penetrate enemy defenses through unpredictable flight patterns. The Zephyrian ship tried to intercept it with their energy weapons, but the missile simply changed direction and hit them from a different angle. On the alien flagship, panic was spreading through the crew. Ships that had served for centuries without a scratch were being destroyed in seconds. The Grand Armada, pride of the Zephyrian Council, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had considered primitive. All ships maintain formation. Zolteth ordered desperately, "Do not break discipline." But discipline was exactly the wrong response to human tactics. The aliens continued to fly in their perfect patterns, while human weapons picked them off one by one. They were like dancers trying to perform, while someone threw rocks at them. Captain Ryan Brooks was watching from Luna Station as the alien fleet fell apart. "They're not adapting," he observed to Lieutenant Foster. "Every military force learns to adjust to enemy tactics. These aliens are still fighting the same way they started." It was true. Despite losing dozens of ships, the Zephyrians continued to use the same formations, the same weapons, the same predictable movements. They had been trained for one type of warfare and could not imagine any other way to fight. The human forces, meanwhile, were constantly adapting. When the aliens tried to concentrate their fire on one section, human fighters dispersed and attacked from multiple angles. When the aliens attempted to retreat in formation, human missiles followed them and struck their engines. Admiral Kate Sullivan was monitoring the battle from Earth, impressed by the professionalism of her forces. "Clean, efficient, and proportional," she commented to President Parker. "Our people are doing exactly what they were trained to do." The president watched alien ships exploding on his screen and felt an odd mixture of satisfaction and pity. These creatures had started a war they were completely unprepared for. It was like watching adults fight children, except the children had started the fight. Commander Yelinara looked at her tactical display and saw the truth that Zoltith was still refusing to accept. Half their fleet was gone, and they had not destroyed a single human ship. The enemy fighters moved like nothing she had ever seen, rolling and spinning through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. "Sir," she said quietly, "we must withdraw. The fleet cannot survive much longer." Zolteth stared at the display, watching another of his ships die in a ball of fire. The Serene Wisdom, a vessel that had served the Council for 800 years, vanished in seconds when a human railgun slug hit its power core. "This is not possible," he whispered. "We are the superior civilization. We have the advanced technology. We have the greater numbers." But numbers meant nothing when those numbers were being used incorrectly. The aliens had more ships, better individual technology, and superior defensive systems. What they did not have was 3,000 years of experience in actually using those things to kill their enemies. The final blow came when Colonel Martinez decided to end the demonstration. "All batteries, concentrated fire on the command ship. Let's send these visitors home." Every human weapon within range focused on the eternal harmony. The alien flagship's shields flared and died under the concentrated assault. Hull plating peeled away like flower petals. Internal explosions lit up the ship from within. Zolteth gave the order, He had never thought he would need to give. All ships retreat, full withdrawal. What remained of the Grand Armada broke formation for the first time in their military history, fleeing toward the edge of the solar system in complete disarray. Behind them, human fighters followed at a respectful distance, making sure the aliens actually left. The great invasion was over, and humanity had barely worked up a sweat. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the command center of the USS Defiance, studying the star charts that showed Zephyr in space. 72 hours had passed since the alien fleet's humiliating retreat from Luna. Now it was time for humanity to return. The visit. Operation Harsh Reality's a go, she announced to her staff. Around her, 3 human battle groups prepared to jump into enemy territory. The carriers USS Defiance, USS Retribution, and USS Reckoning would lead the strike, supported by dozens of destroyers, cruisers, and fighter squadrons. The operation had been planned quickly but thoroughly. Intelligence suggested the aliens would retreat to their stronghold world of Serenity Prime, a planet that had not seen violence in over 2,000 years. It was the perfect place to teach the Zephyrian Council why starting wars with humans was a bad idea. High Commander Zolteth sat in his quarters aboard the damaged Eternal Harmony, trying to understand what had gone wrong. His reports to the Council made no sense, even to him. How could a primitive species destroy half the Grand Armada in less than 15 minutes? The Council's response had been predictable. Gather all remaining forces at Serenity, prime and prepare for a defensive siege. The planet's orbital fortresses were the strongest in Zephyrian space, built over centuries to be impregnable symbols of peace and order. Commander Yulinara brought him the latest intelligence reports. Sir, our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of human space. They appear to be preparing some kind of response to our ... demonstration. Zolteth felt a chill run through him. If the humans were coming to Zephyrian space, it would mean war on a scale his people had never experienced. The Council worlds had no idea what real combat looked like. On Earth, General Steve Murphy was briefing his ground forces for what would be the first human planetary assault in over 50 years. The Marines and Army units under his command had trained for this scenario, but none of them had ever faced it in reality. Remember, people, he told his officers, these aliens have never seen real ground combat. They'll probably surrender as soon as they see us coming. Keep your weapons ready, but don't shoot unless they shoot first. Commander Nicole Hayes was coordinating the orbital bombardment from her position on the USS Retribution. Her job was to take out the alien defense platforms without causing unnecessary damage to the planet below. It was a delicate balance between military necessity and human decency. The jump to Serenity Prime took 6 hours. When the human battle groups emerged from faster-than-light travel, they found the Zephyrian home fleet waiting for them in perfect defensive formation around their most important world. Admiral Sullivan looked at the alien positions and shook her head. They're doing it again. Perfect formations, predictable patterns. Haven't they learned anything? The Zephyrian defensive fleet was larger than the force that had attacked Luna, but it was making the same mistakes. The ships maintained ceremonial spacing, their weapons pointed in textbook directions, their movements following classical defensive doctrine. All ships execute Battle Plan Alpha, Sullivan ordered. Let's show them what happens when you pick a fight with humans. The human attack was nothing like the alien assault on Luna. Instead of approaching in formation, the human ships spread out across space, attacking from multiple angles simultaneously. Fighters launched from the carriers in swarms, their pilots, using every trick they had learned in decades of training. Captain Rick Davis led one of the destroyer squadrons in a flanking attack on the alien right wing. His ships moved fast and unpredictably, launching missiles and railgun slugs while dodging the aliens' energy weapons. Target their command ships first, he ordered his captains. Cut off their communications, and they'll fall apart even faster. He was right. The Zephyrian fleet depended on precise coordination and clear command structures. When human missiles started destroying their flagship vessels, the remaining alien ships began to lose cohesion. On Serenity Prime, the planetary government watched in horror as their mighty fleet died in orbit above them. High Arbitrator Vex High, the sane alien who had threatened humanity weeks earlier, now trembled as he watched human ships methodically destroy everything the Zephyrians could put against them. How can this be happening? He asked his advisors. We are the advanced civilization. We have the superior technology. But technology meant nothing without the knowledge of how to use it in combat. The human ships were smaller and individually less powerful than their Zephyrian counterparts, but they fought with the coordination of a pack of wolves. While the aliens moved like sheep, Lieutenant Ben Clark was leading his fighter squadron against the orbital defense platforms. The alien stations were impressive structures, covered in energy shields and bristling with weapons. But they had been built to fight the kind of ceremonial battles the Zephyrians were used to, not the chaotic reality of human warfare. These platforms are too pretty, he reported to his wing commander. They've got blind spots you could fly a carrier through. The human fighters exploited every weakness in the alien defenses, slipping between shield emitters and striking at vulnerable systems. The platforms, designed to engage enemies at long range in orderly formations, could not cope with small, fast targets that refused to follow the rules. Commander Nicole Hayes coordinated the bombardment with surgical precision. Each strike was calculated to eliminate military targets without harming civilian areas. The humans had not come to conquer Serenity Prime, just to defeat its defenses. Target eliminated, reported one of her gunnery officers, after a particularly large platform exploded. That's the last of their heavy weapons. But the most effective weapon in the human arsenal was not their guns or missiles. It was their psychological warfare. Captain Rick Davis had begun broadcasting human historical documentaries to the alien forces, showing them exactly what humanity was capable of when pushed to war. The aliens, who had never witnessed true violence, watched in horror as human history unfolded before them. Battles where millions died, weapons that could destroy entire cities, conflicts that lasted for decades without mercy or pause. This was what they had challenged when they threatened Earth. The Zephyrian crews began to break psychologically before. The humans even landed ground troops. Ships surrendered without firing a shot. Entire defensive positions abandoned their posts, rather than face the creatures they now understood to be the galaxy's most experienced killers. Commander Zoltith found himself commanding a fleet that was falling apart from fear. His officers reported that crew members were refusing orders, that entire ships were requesting permission to surrender. Sir, Commander Yulinara said quietly, perhaps we should consider opening negotiations. Zoltith looked at his tactical display, showing human ships in complete control of Serenity Prime's orbital space. The Grand Armada was gone. The defense platforms were destroyed. The humans had won another complete victory, and they had made it look easy. General Steve Murphy's ground forces never even had to land. Before his transports could reach the planet's surface, white flags were appearing on every Zephyrian installation. The aliens had surrendered unconditionally, begging for mercy from the species they had tried to pacify. Admiral Sullivan received the surrender request from High Arbitrator Vex High himself. The proud alien leader who had threatened humanity now appeared on her screen as a broken figure, his ceremonial robes torn and his confidence shattered. We surrender, he said in a trembling voice. Please, no more killing. We did not understand. We did not know what you were capable of. Sullivan looked at the alien with something approaching pity. Mr. Vex High, You started a war with the one species in the galaxy that never stopped learning how to fight. What did you think was going to happen? The second phase of humanity's education of the Zephyrian Council was complete. Now came the most important part, teaching them how to live in a galaxy where peace required strength. 6 months after the Battle of Serenity Prime, the Zephyrian Council sat in complete surrender aboard the human flagship USS Constitution. The conference room was simple and functional, nothing like the elaborate ceremonial chambers the aliens were used to. Everything about it spoke of human practicality over alien aesthetics. High Arbitrator Vex High trembled as he signed the surrender documents. His hands shook so badly that Ambassador Tony Rodriguez had to help him hold the pen steady. The proud alien leader who had once threatened to pacify humanity now looked like a broken old man. "There," Rodriguez said gently, when the signatures were complete. "That wasn't so difficult, was it?" Admiral Kate Sullivan sat across from the alien delegation, studying their faces with professional interest. These creatures had started a war they were completely unprepared for, and now they were learning the consequences of their actions. "The terms are quite reasonable," she explained to the assembled aliens. "Earth will take responsibility for military security in this sector. Your species can return to your peaceful pursuits without worrying about external threats." Commander Yelanara, representing what was left of the Zephyrian Defense Force, raised her hand hesitantly. "What about our own military? What happens to our ships and weapons?" Sullivan smiled. "You'll keep them, of course, but you'll be using them under human guidance from now on. We'll teach you how to fight properly, so this never happens again." The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. The species that had tried to force peace on humanity would now learn warfare from their intended victims. It was poetic justice. On a galactic scale, President Dan Parker arrived for the final ceremony aboard Air Force One, which had been modified for interstellar travel. He brought with him a simple message for the former Zephyrian Council: "Welcome to the real galaxy." The president's speech was broadcast across both human and alien worlds. He stood at the podium with the calm confidence of someone whose species had just won the shortest war in galactic history. 6 months ago, you threatened to end our violence through force," he said, looking directly at the alien delegates. "Instead, we ended your peace through war. I hope you've learned something from the experience." High Arbitrator Vex High was given the opportunity to respond. The alien leader stood slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. We did not understand. We thought violence was a sign of weakness, of primitive thinking. We now know that it can also be a tool of mercy." President Parker nodded approvingly. "Exactly right. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the ability to defend what you value most. You forgot that lesson over 3,000 years of safety." The new arrangement was surprisingly simple. Earth would handle all military matters in this sector of space, while the Zephyrian worlds could focus on the peaceful development they were actually good at. Human ships would patrol alien space, human officers would train alien crews, and human doctrine would replace 3 millennia of ceremonial nonsense. Colonel Jake Martinez found himself in charge of the Zephyrian Military Academy, teaching basic combat principles to aliens who had never seen real warfare. His first lesson was simple, but revolutionary for his students. "Peace through strength," he explained to a classroom full of nervous Zephyrian officers. "Your ancestors understood this once, or they never would have survived long enough to build your civilization. Somehow you forgot." One of his students, a young Zephyrian named Telvash, raised his hand. "But Colonel, is it not better to avoid violence entirely? To solve all problems through negotiation and compromise?" Martinez smiled. "Tell me, son, what do you do when someone refuses to negotiate? What happens when compromise isn't possible? When someone wants to take everything you have, including your life?" Telvash thought for a moment. I do not know. We have never faced such a situation. Exactly, Martinez replied. That's why you lost. You built a perfect society for dealing with reasonable people, but the universe is full of unreasonable ones. Sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be ready for war. The lessons were not easy for the Zephyrians to learn. Their culture had spent 3,000 years believing that violence was always wrong, that superior beings could solve any problem through wisdom and patience. Now they were learning that sometimes wisdom meant being prepared to fight. Captain Amy Foster was training Zephyrian pilots in basic combat maneuvers. Her students were technically skilled and incredibly intelligent, but they thought like artists instead of warriors. Stop flying pretty, she told them during a training exercise. Combat isn't a dance. Your enemy doesn't care if your formation looks good. They care about killing you before you kill them. Slowly, painfully, the aliens began to understand. They learned to break formation when necessary, to sacrifice elegance for effectiveness, to think like predators instead of prey. It went against everything they had been taught, but they were quick learners when properly motivated. The transformation was not limited to military matters. Human merchants began trading with Zephyrian worlds, bringing new ideas and technologies. Human scientists shared research with alien scholars. Human artists collaborated with Zephyrian creators, producing works that neither species could have imagined alone. But the most important change was psychological. The Zephyrians were learning that their 3,000 years of peace had been possible only because no one had bothered to threaten them. Now they understood that peace was something that had to be earned and defended every single day. Admiral Sullivan visited the rebuilt Zephyrian fleet 6 months after the surrender. The alien ships still looked beautiful, but now they also looked dangerous. Their formations were practical instead of ceremonial. Their weapons were positioned for effectiveness rather than show. Much better, she told High Commander Zoltith, who was now serving under human oversight. You're starting to look like a real military force. Zoltith nodded gratefully. We owe you a debt we can never repay, he said. You showed us mercy when we deserved none. Sullivan shrugged. We showed you reality. The mercy was letting you survive it. The final ceremony took place on Earth, in the Rose Garden of the White House. Representatives from 12 alien species stood together with human leaders, signing the new Galactic Security Compact. Under the agreement, Earth would provide military protection for any peaceful species that requested it, while those species would contribute to collective defense through trade, technology, and resources. President Parker signed the document. With a smile, Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished aliens, he said, welcome to the Pax Humana. Peace through superior firepower. Ambassador Rodriguez added his own signature to the historic document. It's funny, he commented to the alien delegates. You tried to force us to be peaceful and ended up creating the most militarized region in the galaxy. High Arbitrator Vex High, who had spent months learning about human history and culture, finally understood the joke. You were always peaceful, he realized. You simply defined peace differently than we did. The president nodded. We learned long ago that the best way to avoid war is to be very good at fighting one. It's a lesson that served us well. As the ceremony concluded and the various delegates prepared to return to their worlds, one young human reporter asked the question that everyone was thinking. Mr. President, what happens if we encounter another species like the Zephyrians? One that doesn't learn as quickly? President Parker considered the question seriously. Then we'll teach them the same lesson we taught the Council. Gently if possible, firmly if necessary. The galaxy is a big place, and there's room for everyone who wants to live in peace. He paused, looking up at the stars that were now under human protection. But peace is something you have to be strong enough to defend. We'll make sure our new friends remember that. The Zephyrian Council had ended 3,000 years of peace to fight Earth, expecting to teach humanity about the virtues of pacifism. Instead, they learned that true peace came from the barrel of a gun, held by someone responsible enough to use it wisely. And humanity just chuckled as they took on the role of galactic peacekeepers, protecting a dozen species who were finally learning what peace really meant.